Storytime when a celebrity came into my job and refused to pay. Every so often, we get a celebrity in the restaurant. I've never been here when it's happened though. We're not too far from our city's main concert venue, but the owner still has a strict no comping meals for anyone based on star power policy that we're all apprised of when we were hired. His logic being it'll start as just one exception and turn into all sorts of D-listers sniffing around looking for an ego boost. Ironically, this has never been a problem because the 1 or 2 times we've had real celebrities in, they've never expected a free meal, they've paid and tipped well. It's only the D-listers who act all shocked when the check comes, but we almost never get them either, so it's really not a big deal, until last week. We're located right by my college, and a girl who attends my college was recently on the Dr. Phil show. She was not a featured guest, she did not appear in person, but she was teleconferenced in for like maybe a total of 3 minutes to weigh in on the featured guest, a friend of hers from high school I think, relationship. But because she was on TV, she thought she was the hottest thing to have ever happened on campus. I'd hear people joking about how she was going around telling everyone she was a celebrity and how she kept expecting people to recognize her. It sounded really cringy and terrible. But I don't know her, I hadn't even seen the show, so what did I care? It was fun gossip for 10 seconds, but I quickly forgot about it. However, this girl's self-absorption wasn't completely baseless. There are a lot more students on campus than usual this summer because so many took gap semesters to avoid Zoom during COVID. Not much is happening around here as we ease back into normal life, so people did get unreasonably excited about someone from our school being on national TV. So she was sort of being treated like a celebrity. She was getting a lot of special attention. She even got some free things on campus and had some people ask to take a photo with her, in an ironic sense, but she didn't understand that. So she decided to start testing the waters off campus and I guess met with some success because most of the nearby businesses are staffed with students. She soon appeared in our restaurant. She was a nightmare from the moment she stepped in the door. I didn't recognize her at first, but it all clicked as she was demanding a 4 top despite being a party of 1. We were okay with it only because we weren't especially busy. She didn't make eye contact with her server. She wasn't in my section, but I ate up every second of her visit with us once I realized who she was. The first thing I heard her say after the server said hi and introduced himself was, "Menu, water, new fork," like she was writing out a list. Her server was only just bumped from trainee status and he's barely 16, so it especially sucked that she was dumped on him. He's incredibly shy and sweet. If I'd anticipated the shitstorm this woman blew in with her, I'd have swapped with him. But this all happened pretty quickly and I'll usually do anything to avoid serving classmates I don't like. It's rare I don't like a classmate that I haven't met, but there's a first time for everything. Of course, nothing on our menu was acceptable to her as is. She had to get a ton of substitutions and additions. Even her side salad of mixed greens had to be, not kidding, unmixed. She wanted each lettuce, but separately on the plate. Her server explained that the greens come pre-mixed, but she just stared blankly past him and went, "So, separated," as though it was the most obvious thing ever. The kitchen actually accommodated all of her requests because it was a really slow day and there were easy enough solutions to each thing, but she still sent at least one of her plates back. In the 20 or so minutes it took for her food to come out, she asked us how much longer it would take 4 times. She demanded that we change the music we had onto a playlist of hers instead. She made comments about the lighting. By the time she was finished eating, we were seconds away from throwing her out. He asked if everything was alright and if she needed anything else. She said no, so he said he'd be right back with the check. I could tell from her face, even as far away as I was, that she wasn't expecting a check. She looked all sour and twisted. I was dying internally. It was so satisfying. But then she stood up and calmly just walked right out of the door. This is when I had to follow her. I wasn't sure what I was seeing at first. I thought maybe she'd gone to get her wallet from her car or something, but this isn't the kind of place where a lot of people drive. I just knew in my gut that I had to follow up because her server definitely wouldn't. I went out of the door and yup, she was trip-sitting down the street, tapping away on her phone like nothing was wrong in the world. I called out to her and she half turned around, then realizing I was from the restaurant, tried to pretend she hadn't heard me and went right back to walking, quickening her pace a little. I would have laughed if I wasn't so pissed. So I jogged to catch up with her and was trying to keep the situation nice and calm and allow her to save as much face as possible and was just like, "Oh, hi, sorry, there's just a little matter of the bill," knowing damn well she didn't forget, but figuring confronting her would just feed into unnecessary drama. She looks at me in total disbelief and says that she was going to Instagram her meal with us and that's typically enough when she goes out, without a hint of sarcasm or embarrassment. So I didn't know who she was because her reaction to being on TV was such a laughingstock on campus, but, and maybe this was a little mean, but I couldn't resist. I went, "Sorry, who are you?" And she effing lost it, insisting that I knew exactly who she was and that I was jealous of her and that, wait for it, that's why I was forcing her to pay for her food she ordered at the restaurant. I didn't want to be overly mean, so rather than antagonize her further, though it was very low-hanging fruit, I just told her, "Look, if you don't plan on paying, we'll have to involve the police." She laughed and said, "Well, if you don't know who I am, you won't be able to find me, right?" Honestly, she had me there, but I did need to admit to her that I really knew who she was because for all she knew, we had security cameras or would describe her really well. So I let her walk off and I went back to the restaurant and called the police. It was absurdly easy to track her down because I didn't know who she was and that she was posting geotagged posts online all day, including a super angry post post about how she had eaten at a restaurant and it had been terrible. So she incriminated herself and let the police write to her. I doubt the cops would have followed up so diligently if it were only us, but apparently she'd walked out on a couple other places that generally didn't recognize her and expected her to pay up, and posted angrily about how the businesses sucked, further incriminating herself. They didn't know who she was, but they described her well enough, and that paired with the post was enough for the police to drag her in. Our trainee server actually had to go down somewhere to identify her. He was terrified when he was first asked, but when he came back he was totally giddy and thought the whole experience was pretty cool. A few months ago, my boyfriend Blake and I went out to brunch with some of our friends. After a few mimosas, my close friend Jackie started talking about how she's been making a lot of extra money lately by making content on OnlyFans. A few of the other girls in the group started talking about it and asking Jackie about how much she's making off of it. Blake chimed in after a while and began asking Jackie a bunch of questions as well. He asked her what her content is like and how many videos she's made so far. At first, I didn't think anything of it because I was a little curious too. However, then he started to get a little too interested. He started recommending certain things she should do in her videos to sell more and get more people to watch and subscribe. This was the first red flag. He then asked her what name she came up with or what she goes by on OnlyFans, which to me sounded like he was trying to find her account to check it out later. I gave him a dirty look and he caught on quick and stopped talking about it. I felt a little uncomfortable and planned on talking to him about it later, but I ultimately decided to let it go because I thought I was being insecure. A few weeks later, we hung out with Jackie again when we went downtown with some friends. At one point in the night, Blake asked Jackie about her OnlyFans and how it was going. She smiled at him and told him that it's going great. I also noticed throughout the night he kept staring at her for long periods of time. After that night, I was suspicious and decided that I was going to do some detective work. Needless to say, I couldn't believe what I found. When I got home, I went to Jackie's Instagram page and immediately noticed that Blake was following her, which he hadn't been before. This definitely got me thinking. I knew it was wrong and an invasion of privacy, but I couldn't help myself. I waited till Blake was asleep and I went through his phone. I came across a conversation with his coworker about Jackie's OnlyFans and my heart dropped. I went to his browser and opened the OnlyFans site, and not only did he have an account, but he was still logged in. I went to his profile and immediately saw that he was subscribed to Jackie's OnlyFans. Not only that, but he was sending her extra tips frequently as well. When I confronted him about it, I couldn't believe his response. He said it was just like watching adult videos and I shouldn't be mad at him for something like that. He continued stating that all guys do it and that he didn't see a problem with it. I was so mad I left for the night and called my friends, including Jackie, on a group call to tell them what happened. They all agreed with me on how weird and not okay it was and encouraged me to leave his ass. Jackie also said that she had no idea he was following her and that she was creeped out by it. However, when I asked some of my other friends, they thought it wasn't a big deal and agreed that all guys look at that kind of stuff. I decided that it was too much for me and I ended up breaking up with Blake. However, he's been messaging me nonstop to take him back and getting my other friends to agree with him. I know all guys look at stuff like that, but to me this was different. Did I overreact? Should I have given him a second chance? Story time about how I was ghosted at my own wedding. When I was 17, I started dating my ex-fiancé. We met through mutual friends at my senior ball. Our personalities instantly clicked and we started dating shortly after. We ended up going to the same community college and transferring to the same university. Shortly after our 5-year anniversary, he proposed to me in Hawaii during a spring break vacation. I was ecstatic and instantly started planning everything. During this time, everything seemed to be going smoothly. I noticed he was working a lot of overtime and we only saw each other on his days off, but I didn't mind because I was busy with my job and planning our wedding. My parents passed away when I was young, so the only close family that was attending our wedding was my brother and sister. My brother was going to give me away and my sister was my maid of honor. The rest of our guests were his family and our friends. People started arriving and everything seemed to be going smoothly. However, an hour before the ceremony, I was told that he couldn't be found anywhere. Obviously, this worried me and everyone started frantically looking for him. I thought to myself that he'd possibly been in an accident or something grave had happened. When I tried calling him, the calls wouldn't go through and the number wasn't in use anymore. I checked his social media pages and all of them were gone. My brother went to our apartment to check for him and when he called me, I felt like my whole world fell apart. He told me that our apartment had been cleaned out of all of his things. It's like he completely vanished. All that he left was a note saying, "I can't do this, I'm sorry." I had to tell everyone that the wedding was off. I was broken and had no idea why it happened. I spent the next couple years healing and working on myself, then meeting someone amazing who helped me overcome what had happened. I never thought I was going to hear from my ex again until one day I got a call from an unsaved number. When I answered the call, my heart sank to my stomach hearing my ex-fiance's voice. All the pent-up anger I had from what he did to me came boiling to the surface. He begged me to let me explain why he did what he did. I told him that I need some time to think on it. After about a week, I decided that I needed closure and met up with him at a park. It was awkward seeing him again and he looked different. He explained he'd been in the closet for most of his life and always rejected the urges. That was until he met a coworker that he fell in love with. It turns out he had started cheating on me with this coworker shortly after he proposed. This explains why we almost never saw each other except his days off. It wasn't just overtime. As the wedding got closer, his coworker told him that he needs to end things with me if he wants to be with him. The night before our wedding, they met up and he was given an ultimatum. He either got married to me and they never speak again, or he left me and they could be together. He said he was torn but ultimately chose to leave me. However, he couldn't face me, our friends, or his family, so he ran. 3 months after this, they broke up and he came out to his family. He said he wanted to reach out to me numerous times but was scared and couldn't bring himself to face me until now. A lot was said after this, but ultimately, I got the closure that I needed and we parted ways. He asked if we could possibly be friends in the future, but I told him that I didn't want him in my life. My husband is a transgender man and we've always wanted to start a family together. I have a huge fear of pregnancy, so he offered to carry the baby. It was an insane process. He had to stop taking testosterone for a long time, but he was amazing throughout the whole process and I did everything in my power to help him feel more comfortable. None of my family know that he's transgender. They're homophobic, transphobic, all the phobics, but our friends know. He posted an ultrasound on his private Instagram, not knowing that my sister follows him on a burner account. Well, she saw the photo and told my whole family. They were furious that I wouldn't tell them. Our plan was always to say that we adopted. They assumed I was the one pregnant and blew up on me, so I just let it go and rolled with the lie because I wasn't going to out my husband. The first couple of months, I let them visit. Eventually, I'd start eating big meals and purposely bloating myself to the point of discomfort so I looked pregnant. They said around the 6-month mark that I was remarkably small, but I just played it off. Eventually, I couldn't lie any longer, so I looked for every excuse in the book not to see my family. I turned down the offers of baby showers, gender reveal parties, and anything that would require us seeing each other. Luckily, my family lives an hour away and we all live busy lifestyles, so them randomly visiting wasn't an issue. The one time they did pop in unexpectedly, we were out of the house. If they FaceTimed, I made a point to be in bed feeling horribly sick so I couldn't give the bump update. I lied my ass off and they just thought that I had a rough pregnancy. My husband gave birth a year ago and went straight back on testosterone, and now we're happy as ever. My family have met our daughter and they adore her. However, a week ago, after an argument between myself and a friend, said friend decided to out my husband by messaging my family and included proof. They did it by adding everybody to a group chat, posting screenshots and basically the whole story, then saying, "I'll leave you all to discuss." Then they left the chat and blocked me and my husband. In a transphobic rage, my mother raced to my home and all but beat my front door down. I had to call the cops. I've been disowned, but that hasn't stopped the daily calls and texts coming from my parents, aunts, uncles, siblings, and etc. They've been leaving nasty transphobic slurs on my voicemail and other hateful crap. I ended up crying to my friend yesterday who told me that I should have been honest with my family as it would have saved me a lot of heartache. That, or we said we miscarried, then adopted later. I'm not happy things played out the way they did. I just feel so sad now. Was I wrong to lie to my family in order to protect my husband? My husband and I entered our relationship monogamous and honestly everything seemed amazing. We have a couple hobbies that we do together and friends that we hang out with and everything's been fine. My husband got a new job 2 years ago and meets lots of people all the time. I understand we still get crushes on people, but we love each other and I expect us to never act on that. One day he came to me asking for an open relationship and he was obviously researching it. He framed it by saying how good it would be for us and told me about all the positives. I was so secure in our relationship and figured, you know what, why not, even though I didn't really want it. I should have stuck up for myself more, but honestly, maybe this was meant to happen. He must have had someone in mind because right away he already had 2 women lined up and was already seeing them. It's just crazy. We work full time, so we have our evenings to spend time together and do our hobbies together, but suddenly he's out on dates. A lot. It's really hurt me and I tried talking to him about it, but he was kind of manipulative and I see it now. After this, I finally started meeting other people online and chatting. I met one man who was very, very handsome and a really great guy and decided to meet up. I've never felt these feelings before. My husband and I kind of had a slow burn that got better with time, but this is just something completely different. We connect on a totally different level. It's better in the bedroom, so much passion, enthusiasm, and exploring. The conversations are better. He takes an interest in what I have to say and I love hearing about what he has to say. And honestly, we seem like a better fit. I've even opened up and told him about this open relationship and I didn't really want it and all the things that go with it. That's when he confessed that he's been waiting to see if it was possible for us to be monogamous. I'm planning on leaving my husband. I'm seeing a lot of things now that I never saw before now that I've been with this new man for about 5 months. My husband has been coming home more often and I think things are falling apart with one of his women, possibly the other as well. I honestly don't even ask about it anymore, which I think he is kind of sensed. He whines and moans that I'm going out too often, but I just kind of tell him the same thing he told me and do it anyway. He said he wants to talk about going back to normal. I don't know what to say to him. I want to be kind, but I also want to let him know that he destroyed what we had and what we could have had. I really don't want to do therapy or try to save this relationship. It feels over to me. What should I do and how should I go about it? Storytime about the most embarrassing moment working as a TSA agent. So I work for the TSA and have for a few years now. It's a good job overall. I'm underpaid, but the benefits are nice and I get overtime when I want it. Over a year ago, during the week leading up to Christmas, we had some really bad weather that delayed all the flights. I volunteered to stay late so that my coworkers could go home to their families. Most of the work was done anyway, so it was mostly just standing around waiting for the odd latecomer. I was working the AIT, the space tube thingy, when 3 passengers came up together, a middle-aged man, a middle-aged woman, and a teenage boy. Mom goes through, all is fine. Dad goes through, all is fine. Kid comes up, I get a good look at him. Hoodie, sweatpants, shortish hair, smooth face. I figure he's about 13, maybe 14. I hit the button, direct him to wait with me for a moment, and then gesture to the screen, which lit up his chest area. I tell him that I have to pat the area down. He's a little nervous. I figure that's because he's so young. This is probably his first time getting a pat down, but he says okay and I start the pat down. I do the left side of the chest and feel some moob. which catches me off guard because he didn't look chubby at all. I move to the right side of the chest, read what's on the hoodie, and it all clicks at once. The hoodie has the name of a local college on it. This is an adult, not a child. He's not wearing sweatpants, she is wearing yoga pants. She doesn't even know the couple that just came through. I look at her face, which is bright red, my hand is still on her boob, and I pull it back like I just got bit by a snake. I immediately call for my supervisor, who comes over and asks what's wrong, and I explain the situation to her. That's when my supervisor covers her mouth in what I believe is utter shock. After groping this woman that I thought was a boy, I call my supervisor over. I tell her the situation and she covers her mouth. At first, I thought she was absolutely mortified, but then I realized she's trying not to laugh. She takes a minute to pull herself together, tells me to go take a break, and finishes screening the passenger herself. Once that was done, I apologize to the passenger. She tells me it's fine, that it wasn't the first time she was mistaken for a boy, and she probably should have said something before I started touching her. I leave her alone and go talk to my supervisor to figure out how exactly fired I am. She tells me to calm down, that it was just an honest mistake, and that she has my back if the passenger files an official complaint, but that probably won't happen and I shouldn't be worried. That reassured me a little, but I still groped a woman and ruined Christmas, so I feel like an absolute monster. I swallow my shame and finish my shift, then I go to the airport proper to find some food because I just finished a 12-hour shift and there's no way I have energy to cook dinner. I saw my hapless victim sitting at her gate waiting for her flight. I went up to her to apologize again and saw that the flight had been delayed until morning. It was about 11 at night at this point. I apologize again, she says it's fine, and I ask her if she's planning to stay the whole night. She said she has to because all the hotels in the area are booked. I tell her that I'm getting some dinner and I offer to get her some food as well. After all, I already got to second base. I think it's only fair that I buy her dinner. She agrees and we go to one of the restaurants that's open late, get some food and start eating. She said she gets mistaken for a boy a lot and it's not a big deal. We ended up talking for a few hours before I finally told her that I had to get home and apologize again for the accidental molestation. She said that all is forgiven if I promise to take her on a real date when she gets back. I agreed, she gave me her number and I immediately started texting her when I got home. We kept talking until her flight finally left. When she got back, I picked her up at the airport and a few days later took her on a real date that I promised her. We just celebrated our 1-year anniversary.